So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet. We find then the layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste from many centuries. As we read then, for instance, Yirmiyahu, we establish then times and seasons, because we read Yirmiyahu the 61st chapter, explain then the feasts found in Leviticus the 23rd chapter. But let's then understand also certain areas where then the Messiah himself spoke of regarding then the sons of Ishmael. The Messiah himself, during his ministry, he always made mention of the first son of Ibrahim. We don't understand this factor because the instructions were somewhat slightly modified for the benefit of the Hebrews. Understandably, we then must verify then after the prophets what is then going on with these holy instructions, so then we can read properly. As we then identified some of the areas regarding then the instructions, we read, for instance, sections of the 62nd chapter of Yirmiyahu. We understand then it's regarding then the sons of Ishmael. As we speak of caravans or then merchants, where do we start our quest? Very importantly, Joseph was then a son, and then Yaakov was in a place where then his forefather started then the pilgrimage, and obviously Joseph was envied by these brothers, and then they tried to destroy him. They threw him into a pit, dry, and he was nearly left for dead. Then came the caravan of the Ishmaelites. Where do we find these? We find these in Bereshit. Bereshit is the starting of the instructions. We find these in the 37th chapter of Bereshit, or Genesis, and you find sections then related with the time of Joseph. Let's then understand the caravan is found in the 25th verse of the 37th chapter of Bereshit, or Genesis. And threw him into the pit, and the pit was empty and had no water in it. And as he sat down to eat bread, then they saw the caravan of the Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels bearing spices, balm, and then other items. So then we established then very simply, the sons of Ishmael, they were very active during this time. They were the traders of this period of time. For instance, when there was a famine in the land, the caravans of the Ishmaelites, they were everywhere. So they were the traders of the time. Where do we find these regarding then the restoration of the authority of this period of time? There is a combination of Bereshit, Genesis. Also then Yirmiyahu the prophet made mention of the sons of Ishmael. Merchants. Where do we find then merchants? You find the 23rd chapter of Yirmiyahu the prophet. Very simply, we can read and establish these layers. So then we make ourselves wise by reading these and then instructing other people. 23rd chapter of Yirmiyahu explains this factor. So then the crowning. The area of this crowning is not truly crowning, but yet it is the turban. Turban given then to the sons of Ishmael as they started out as. And then our chief traders, whose then are very weighty upon the earth. So we are explaining then sections of the sons of Ishmael, whosoever they are. The sons of Ishmael are many, there are thousands. The Arab nations, many kinds of nations. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Libya, lots of those places in Saudi Arabia, those are the sons of Ishmael. And Ishmael was a king of trade. As we read these then, we establish then why the Islamic world is so strong at this point. Obviously there is a prophecy that must be completed. You find sections of the 62nd chapter of Yeshayahu and then linked with Ezekiel the 37th. And those prophecies must be then completed. As we understand, some of the sons of Ishmael are very serious regarding then the Islamic State. Understandably. However, sometimes there is a clash with other cultures from other parts of the world. Some areas can cause some unrest, and nations trying to protect people, civilians, they should secure areas until this authority is completely restored in the hands of the Ishmaelites. Understandably, China holds 57% of the world's trade. That's where then our transition starts. We do understand from the time of Ibrahim, the first son was a king. So a whole generation, ever since Ishmael was born, then thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these caravans, and these people are tradespeople. Then, during the time of the 1,000 years of the seat, then it changed. There was a change in the scenario. Areas of Asia, for instance, received the enlightenment of Ishmael, and also of tabernacling. They received them both. Ever since then, Asia became very strong. At this point, China holds 57% of the world's trade. It truly is a lot. But the participation of the sons of Ishmael is then joined with China, providing them fuel, and at the same time then restoring the authority of those times. That's why there is absolutely no control over the Islamic people, because they are the sons of Ishmael. So then, expecting more of these nations joining up, and then they do fight to the death, there is no question. But then it was explained before, during the time of the restoration period, we understand the holy instructions must be completed, and then nations should understand what they should not do. The conventional ways of war, those are placed aside. We must watch the Creator himself organizing nations and events as per the instructions given by the prophets. As far as we can understand, if there is an unrest in some countries, nations should get together, should speak of and secure areas, in troublesome areas, and then other nations should help. As far as placing religious people under the control, they should not do this, because there is a prophecy going on. But let's then verify as far as the transition. We are during the time of a transition. From the time of the 1,000 years of deceit and back during the time of the restoration period, where then the holy cities of the Messiah then return, and the authority of the Ishmaelites and the strength of tabernacle must be united. This truly is a fact, it cannot be changed. Merchants, where do we find these? Revelation 8th chapter and the 20th chapter you find then, and the merchants of the earth. We are explaining then a combination of Asia, China, the kingdom of the east, kingdom of the north, and the Soviet Union protecting the trade of China, and then Africa as then a very important place where then rare materials are stored, and most importantly tabernacling on the land of Cush as per the instructions of the prophet. And then you find the sons of Ishmael providing then the fuel required for these freighters, these merchants, so then they play a very intricate role as then they sit on a throne of the authority of the first son, as it was King Ishmael. So we understand the intricacy of the holy instructions and how balanced these instructions are, giving specific guidelines and very clear understandings, the way they should treat each other, the way they should consider each other, and the transitional time. And then later on there is a second transition, where then the sons of Ishmael then they can absolutely becoming a very intricate part in the entire trade system of the world. At the moment China must lead, and as the nations of Babylon, or those nations who were involved during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, as they retrieve, China then must lead. And then shortly later, a short time later, then there is the second transition, where the sons of Ishmael join, and then they provide fuel for the merchants. That's where then you find a huge time of prosperity. Absolutely hugely. It is so big you can't even count it, because you find many kinds of descriptions of the prosperity yet coming. Prophet Daniel already mentioned the high knowledge regarding trade, computerized trade. But then not only this, later on leads then towards the combat of the end. And this factor obviously requires a more refined study of Revelation and then Zechariah. Later on I'm going to study these intricacies, but at this time we must watch then China making a deal with the Congo, and then closing up then the Gentile Netzer, as Cuba and the Soviet Union are already joining, and then both of these nations, the nation of the Kingdom of the North, the Soviet Union, and then Cuba, and then Congo. So then these sector of the Gentile Netzer can be completed, and then providing later a strong link regarding the combat of the end. With these in mind, then we study Revelation, and then understand the 8th chapter, the 9th chapter, and then the 20th chapter. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.